There are now more than 118,000 cases and 4,291 people have lost their lives.
COVID-19, or the coronavirus disease, was first reported in Wuhan, China in December 2019.
Chinese authorities pinpointing its source to this food market.
With nothing known about the virus aside from being highly contagious and fatal, fear and panic quickly spread across the globe, engulfing and paralyzing the lives of many.
COVID-19 can be characterized as a pandemic.
It didn't take long before reports of new cases from different parts of the world flooded the news. The first confirmed death outside China was reported in the Philippines in February 2020.
The patient sought consult and was admitted in one of the country's government hospitals after experiencing mild cough.
As the country's pioneer institution for infectious diseases, the Research Institute for Tropical Medicine, or RITM, was the first responding agency when the pandemic reached Philippine shores. Designated by the Department of Health, or DOH, as the National Referral Center for the Management of Severe Acute Respiratory Syndrome, or SARS, and other emerging and re-emerging infectious diseases, the Institute is heavily involved in the country's outbreak preparedness and response measures. This includes providing clinical guidelines for the management of air raid, conducting confirmatory laboratory testing, training health workers, and providing patient care services. RITM made full use of its human resources and laboratory resources by activating its Incident Command System, or ICS, which identified key personnel and operations needed to manage and implement outbreak preparedness and response measures against COVID-19.
For the COVID outbreak, we had teams for hospital operations, lab operations, and later on, vaccine operations. To make things more systematic, there were people who did the planning, people who executed the plan. There were technical teams from the various operations teams. And we worked together in a coordinated way. I would just say we were preparing all the time. Being an infectious disease hospital, the basic principles of response were there, the basic needs, but as we all realized later, these were all very small scale to what was demanded, required of our response for this pandemic.
During the crucial time of rising suspected COVID-19 cases, RITM was the first to establish and implement the World Health Organization's recommended testing strategy to detect SARS-CoV-2, the virus causing COVID-19. The Institute, through its research collaborators from Tohoku University, was able to acquire the required SARS-CoV-2 specific primers and probes needed in establishing the assay for the COVID-19 test. Once the supplies were received, the assay was optimized and verified, and on January 30, 2020, RITM performed the first real-time polymerase chain reaction test, or RT-PCR, in the country.
For us to have a confidence dun sa test, what we did was the first positive cases in RITM, the samples from those cases, we sent it to Australia. Sure enough, their testing matched with our testing. Kaya we were very confident na maganda yung quality ng test na na-set up natin for COVID. Eventually, the numbers of samples were very huge. We were no longer able to test within the turnaround time, and there were a lot of people waiting for their results. Kaya one of our strategies was also to increase the number of testing laboratories, and we did that with the help of DOH.
Nasa 3 to 5
So what we
days
did was to establish several teams of trainers. They were the ones going to the regions and doing the testing. Eventually, we had to shift to a virtual type of training for molecular detection. There was also biosafety and biosecurity na training. Training for how to collect swabs. So iba-ibang teams po yan na nagtuturo. And we were doing it simultaneously.
In preparation for the possible COVID-19 outbreak in the country, RITM provided the AREAD program of DOH with an interim guideline on the definition, diagnosis, and management of the COVID-19 disease. The Institute dedicated its full hospital capacity to COVID-19 cases in fulfillment of its role as the National Referral Center for AREAD. In fact, the first locally transmitted case of COVID-19 was admitted in the RITM isolation ward on March 5, 2020.
If there's any novel or new organism that would emerge, like the SARS-CoV-2, we have to observe the highest standard of containment. We have a clinical protocol for any emerging and re-emerging infection, but that guideline really can be applicable to any new emerging or re-emerging infection. We shared that with the Department of Health so that it can be used initially as the initial guideline for the management of SARS-CoV-2. It has evolved as new information came in, as how the organism is transmitted from one person to another. So with the new information, we revised the guideline, and DOH has already engaged other sector in the development of the guidelines.
Together with WHO and DOH, RITM is also involved in the accreditation and licensing of private laboratories who intend to carry out COVID-19 testing. Before laboratories are allowed to administer tests independently, the Institute conducts the assessment of their facilities, provides proficiency testing panels, and facilitates validation of test results. With more laboratory diagnostic tests trying to enter the market, such as PCR detection kits, antibody tests, and antigen tests, to name a few, RITM has been mandated to evaluate these tests in collaboration with the Food and Drug Administration, or FDA, to ensure that locally produced and internationally sourced COVID-19 test kits are reliable and safe for public use. RITM has demonstrated its capacity for efficiently coordinating a nationwide scale outbreak response during this pandemic. The Institute maintains its position on preparedness against future health security threats as a whole of society concern, with the multi-sectoral approach highly focusing on science and evidence, as well as constant collaboration with local, national, and international stakeholders and partners. Aside from its role in the national COVID-19 response, the ISO 9001-2015 recertification of RITM is one of the notable achievements of the Institute during the pandemic. The recertification achieved in 2021 is a testimony to RITM sustaining its best practices and maintaining a culture of quality standards even through challenging times.
You were dealing with an unknown organism, but we had to respond as the answers were being discovered, and that was the difficult part. You were planning for something you were not sure of. Every country should have a pandemic preparedness plan, and that should be complete from the systems, the resources, implementation, monitoring and evaluation. We need to work with government using our experience as a reference, because our experience is the Philippine experience. We dealt with the local problems, we knew the local scenarios. So this might be good information to be considered when the National Pandemic Preparedness Plan is prepared by the government.
with emerging and re-emerging infectious diseases remaining to be one of the biggest threats in the lives of millions of Filipinos, RITM maintains its commitment to lead the country in preparing for and responding to these health emergencies and challenges. The Institute continuously strives to develop and implement strategies that will prepare the country against future health security threats.